because when we talk about the rebrand, I think sometimes, and definitely this happened in our organization, people think, oh, okay, cool, we're going to change the logo, we're going to have new colors, new typography, and probably a new like background for our Zoom calls, and probably like a fancier looking website, and that's cool, that's everything. If only that was everything. It actually encompasses so much more than that, and it's a great time to actually scope out what is it that you are going to achieve with this rebrand beyond just like the obvious, I guess. So yeah, bringing Liam in to chat this through as well.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so I think when you start a rebrand, there's so many things that you need to address just to obviously skin it in the whole new brand and get everything looking at it in that way, that you actually have to like come over and look at, I think, your entire strategy as well, and all those bits you can revisit again. And for us, that was really important because we'd moved from lead gen to demand gen. So there was actually a lot of stuff that we had out in the world, all these sort of old tactics that we used to do whilst we were doing lead gen and stuff that were no longer like valid or like didn't really work for us anymore, but we'd never got around to sort of addressing those. So this was a perfect time for us to take a step back, look at it and fix all of those things. And so we can like, you almost can like refresh yourself to move forward as like a new person. Like it gives you that opportunity. And I suppose, as Alice was saying about rebrands being a lot of work but maybe distracting from the main work, I mean, this is the way of like incorporating all of that work that you did want to do, that maybe would have been big projects, but to do them all at once and come out the other side like raring to go. So there are like a few key things that I think were included in the scope of work and that we also chose to include in it, which, you know, you could easily avoid if you just wanted to, you know, rebrand, get yourself out there. You could like not add this to your plate, but it just seemed like the perfect time to do it. And something that I would recommend if you're going forward with a rebrand is to take all this time basically to come out and do it. So due to the rebrand we visited, and I'll cover these things in particular, but there are other things we visited as well, which I can briefly go over as well that were like, yeah, that we also went through. But we revisited our forms, all the PDFs we had, the website journey, ads, and all the email programs we had running as well. Obviously, we would have had to address all these things probably from a design perspective anyway, but there was just so much more that we could actually go looking at to improve them. So forms was like a massive one for us. Like, as I said, when we were working, like doing a lead gen strategy, we amassed hundreds of forms, like, because everything we created needed a form, and all those forms needed to be like uniquely identify what the form was for, that would feed back into like our marketing automation system and CRM, so that we could have follow up. And basically in the end we had over 200 forms. Previously as well on the website, we'd been using form handlers because we'd built like our own custom look and custom enrichment on it and everything like that. So that meant that we had literally individually 200 forms. The rebrand gave us, you know, time to step back. We're like, one, we don't need that many forms now because we're not running any lead gen. So, you know, there's like a set number of forms that we actually need because we're not capturing leads for loads of different pieces of content. We're literally just trying to use forms to capture inbound demo requests pretty much and webinars. So that meant that we knew we could already reduce it that much as well. And two, we wanted to then look at like a better way of like collecting that data. So we were looking for ourselves, we're like moving away from these Pardot form handlers we're using and moving towards that just normal Pardot native forms, so we can have extra built-in functionality for that. And before we knew that, like, to tie this all in with our custom enrichment, change all the back-end systems to make it more efficient in Pardot and Salesforce, this would have been like a major piece of work. But obviously, whilst we're redoing the entire website and the rebrand, building these things out, this was like the perfect time for us to address this as well. So we've made huge progress here, and that we've managed to scrap 200 forms, which is horrible to upkeep, and like extremely like a massive burden on the marketing team and ops team, to now only having 20, which has just only made us like more efficient going forward. Second to that was PDFs. So obviously running a lead gen model means that you have like loads of PDFs, because we were creating tons of ebooks to capture contact data to then obviously run follow-up to. Since we moved to sort of more like of a demand generation model where everything's ungated, PDFs aren't always actually the most like the best way to display your content. It's not the best way that it's consumed. We don't actually need all of these PDFs. So before that was a massive job to go back, right, and look at all of the PDFs we've got, think about how we could better display this content, think if it's still even like they were still even valid with what we were saying today, like whether they were content that we still wanted. And this meant that the rebrand meant that, well, we're either going to have to reskin these all in the new brand, or we say, no, that's not what we want. And this is how we want to display it. We'd actually have it as a landing page, or that PDF is completely irrelevant to us now, and we'll scrap it. So we were able to, part of the scope of work thing was to go through all of those PDFs, then choose the ones that we were going to recreate, why, and if not, like whether we were going to create them as like something more interactive. So like here we had like a PDF for cold calling, like 8 ways to improve your cold calling strategy. This playbook is now like a completely interactive page on the website, and we're no longer sort of running it as like a resource that you could get from the PDF. And in that interactive page, we've got video, we've got, as well as it all being text-based, so, you can access it all on site. And then also and this was a major piece, and I think we've still got so much work to do on this, like so much work, and we'll work our way through it like over the rest of this year, really. But it gave us a massive chance to look at our sort of on-site journey. So obviously moving to like a demand gen model means that the on-site journey is even more important. You just want people to access content, get themselves into a hole, and find more and more of what they want to see. So we built out previously, like having moved from lead gen to demand gen, like there are loads of CTAs embedded in our blogs and everywhere that led people to like gated landing pages. So many so that it was very hard to like control and list all of those pages. The rebrand meant we've gone through every single page, all of the CTAs on the blogs, every single blog, and we're able to then switch those out, make sure that we have no gated content, or as best we can redirect people to more relevant content, update blog CTAs with more up-to-date stuff, better things that we've got going on. And it just meant we were able to address all of that all at once, which again, on its own, outside of rebrand, would have just been like a massive amount of work, but it gave us the perfect opportunity to do that. We got to update all case studies and social proof as well, decide which ones there like worked for us, which was still relevant, which case studies like showed what we want to show today and not just what we had previously in the past. We looked at all of our website navigation as well, like how easy was it to get resources, where can we get to, like how do people move on the site, how does people get to where they want from there. And then we're obviously updating like the global header and footer of all the things that we want. We actually made some key changes like on our landing pages, which previously you were unable to navigate back to the website from. We can now like move and make them more navigable so people can like move from a landing page back to the website, and it makes that whole experience easier, like, which is more in line with what we want to do in a demand gen model. And then we're also like working on like the drift bar and making completely created a whole new copy from that, and whole new characters to sort of like fit in with the rebrand and fit in with what we were doing now. So it meant we could address all of that. There's so much that changes when you move from like lead gen to demand gen, such as we had just pages with like a video just embedded on it, that then we now we wouldn't do. We've got other places that we know where people actually consume that content, like, and is more valuable for us, like pushing them to the YouTube channel, right, where they can comment, like, share, subscribe, do all of that stuff, rather than just having this random page that we'd have with a video on that was potentially gated. And the rebrand made us go through every page to find these things and like recategorize where we put that content and like create journeys so that people can find it there. So that was like an absolutely massive one. Sorry, Fran, were you gonna?
Sorry, I was going to just say, I interrupted your flow. While you were just talking about the drift bot, we actually had a question on it, so I thought it would be quite good. So Michael's asking, there you go, it's coming in hot on the screen. So like, was the drift bot new, or did you need to redesign like the chatbot flows, and just kind of like, might be good to talk about what we did on that.
Yeah, actually, so the drift bot was already there before, but I think we had like some issues with like chat priorities, like which bots played when and how that worked. And we realized that we built up all these different specific bots for different pages over time as well, but they didn't always fire at the right times. And some of those were now irrelevant. We had ones for like different offers and things, and basically it become a big mess. And also the drift bot itself like was very basic, and I think it was because every time we tried to create like almost like a persona for the drift bot, like something exciting and new about it, we didn't really have a brand to base that off of and fit in with it. It was quite, we're a bit lost. So having this new brand, this new identity, being able to like really like say who Cognism are, enabled us to then like use that to base the new drift bot off. We then simplified it, made sure that it was like that we had less playbooks running, and then the ones that were running always fired at the right times and push, and in that same sort of website journey thing, push people in the right directions, and where we wanted them to go. So yeah, we actually quite had a lot of fun there, just brainstorming how we were going to build it out and how we were going to make it. I don't know if you've got anything more to add, Frank, because you're involved in the process as well.
No, I think you summed it up. All good. Yeah, I think the one thing I would say about drift that I think you've already alluded to it really, but we kind of made the mistake of trying to have playbooks for every page almost at one point. And when we actually took stock and simplified it, we realized that we could have a more streamlined approach and something that was more on message because we had less noise. So I think that if you were looking to deploy it, I would always start off with a few playbooks as opposed to, I think we got a bit excited, didn't we, and started doing hundreds of playbooks, which are actually quite hard to track. So yeah, that's a bit of advice I guess I would give.
Maybe we could also just, I think Liam and I are actually in the same room for once. So, but I thought we could quickly answer Monica's question about linking the rebrand outcomes to revenue and growth, because I think that's really important. So not third-party studies. This is like, it's not an exact science, but essentially I thought about some key metrics that we would increase based on how going through this process and tying back to my original objectives. So I believe that we could increase the amount of traffic, organic traffic we get from branded search through going through the rebrand process. So that was just applying a percentage increase figure that I felt was feasible by going through this process, and then also percentage increase in website engagement metrics and just general traffic as well, which then ultimately fed into increase in direct demo requests. And as that filters down throughout our normal funnel metrics, what that looked like in a revenue output. But then also one that's like much harder to measure was just the speed and accelerated output of everything from design through to like our ability to get a campaign live and in market, our ability to do just a basic task. And that's like, obviously that's much harder to tie back to revenue and growth, but it does go to becoming a more efficient team and being able to get a lot more done. So I'd say those are like a few areas to look at that we did look at to try and tie back to. Anyway, I'll go back to hand it back over to Liam. Is it Liam? You're still...
Just the one final slide, but so another bit that came into the scope of work was obviously redoing all of the ads that we had live and running, and that was obviously an absolutely massive task that Fran managed to absolutely smash through. But you can take that off. You could just again take all your ads and just reskin them in the new brand, but we sort of took it as a time to deep dive into all of our current metrics and the performance of those, which then actually led us to restructure our accounts at the same time, so that we weren't actually just reskinning the ads that we currently have, but we were using the opportunities to create new ads for the gaps that we then had within this new structure. So I felt like this was obviously like a great time to like address all of those things, almost start from scratch and see where like, oh, where are we missing things, we're then looking at like, oh, whether we create different formats of different ads that we maybe hadn't considered before, like whether we're like adjusting different creatives for like Facebook and Instagram stories, for example, and trying out and using it as a way to like create new ads that we could then test. And then another big one, and which is obviously again massively affected by our earlier transition from lead gen to demand gen, was our email nurtures. So again, we could have just gone through all of these and just re-skinned a lot of the emails, and just built a new templates for them and just put those in. But actually, we took the time to like actually adjust all the copy. Some of the way we'd written before, like I don't think really suited us now. We also looked at like which email nurtures like were no longer even relevant. Some of them we'd maybe built for as follow up to lead gen playbooks, and they're just still active in Pardot. We had other ones that like maybe responded to stages and in like CRM that are no longer really particularly relevant as well. And it's just a big cleanup piece of work that we were able to do there, and really like think like some we consolidated as well. So we found nurtures that we might have had were more specific than they needed to be, and we could actually consolidate them into one email nurture that was obviously like a way of reducing the number of emails we send, and an easier way for us to manage as well. And all at that same time as well, we did other important things like updating the preference center and things like that. So it was just a much bigger task in the end than just updating the templates, but it's left us in a way better place, and a better place for us to like move forward with email as well. But yeah, so that's it really from that side of things. But yeah, the scope of work was even bigger than these things in some respects, because we even readdressed some of our naming conventions and things, and UTMs and everything really. But yeah, it's like a perfect time really to take stock of everything, look back and start to basically fix it.
Great, thank you. And I think this is a good time for me to come in as well. And I want to reiterate something that I sort of covered at the beginning, but probably didn't drive home enough, and talk about an actual example of how we did this. But when you're looking at this and we're talking through it all, and it does depend on the maturity of your organization and your marketing team in terms of how much would be involved in this process. Obviously, we're talking about a large marketing team, very content heavy. We had a lot of stuff out in the world, and we took lead gen seriously when we were doing lead gen. So we had a lot of stuff to unpick. But you don't, I guess what I would say is think about your MVP. Like, what can you get away with to go live with your new brand that will still have an impact, but isn't necessarily going to keep you in this state of work in progress for as minimum amount of time as possible, basically. So what we thought about was, these are the non-negotiables. Like, we can't go live with a new brand and have paid ads running in old brand, or have Google ads linking to landing pages in the old brand. Like, these are must-have things that have to be all aligned. But we could live with the fact that we were going to roll out a new blog template across the website. And if you started going deep into our blog, because we, again, take content very seriously, we have a blog of about, 300 plus articles. Once you get past probably 100, you might start to find blogs that haven't got, that actually just have our placeholder, rebrand, hero image, probably have an old branded pull through, in-page images probably aren't all updated. And so it's not an ideal state, and we are going to continue to work through that in a backlog process of tasks. But those blogs get 10, maybe 15 hits a month. It's not huge amounts in comparison to the rest of the site. So we prioritize based on traffic, based on eyeballs, based on what we think was going to have the biggest impact. So I would just say, you can think about it in that way. That wasn't going to be, if we said we had to get all 300 blogs and we needed to have a hero, a pull through, in-page images, the full works all updated in the new brand, we would definitely not be live today. So that's another thing to think about, like what's the MVP. And then the other thing as well is like, don't let it halt progress. So we have another product or tool that we offer, which is called Cognism Signatures. And that was all being reskinned in the product to fit with a new brand. And they were ready to launch in April. And we weren't ready on the Cognism side yet. So, but we didn't think, we just decided, it's fine. It's completely different ICP, completely different persona. We're going to launch it in the new brand. We never had one single comment about it, and like it didn't stop us progressing, and it never stopped growth. So always think about, like, I guess just don't let the default be, well, no, because we're not ready, we haven't got the rebrand. Think about it in stages, think about it in increments, think about what you can get away with post live and pre-live, and I think that's a really important message. And then I guess just to reiterate, in terms of when you're thinking about undergoing the project, like it's a lot, so you need to make sure you resource it properly. Like we ended up, by the end, I think we had about 5 different freelancers working on the design. We have an in-house design team of 3 as well, because for every blog there was about 5 different images that needed to be created. Times that by, let's say we did 200, not the 300, plus you've got I don't know what, 400 other web pages, etc., and then all of the other collateral. It's a huge amount of work, so you need to make sure you have a process for how that work's going to run. That process fits with all the different teams and it's communicated well and clearly, and then also that it's like fully resourced. So if you need to use Upwork freelancers, utilize Upwork freelancers, which we definitely did have to by the end. So yeah, just some other things to think about.